Okay, we are streaming and recording. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Hi, welcome everyone to the third day of chess, at least for most of it, it's the third day. And also welcome to session 6 on PUFs and White-Box Cryptography. I'm Roel and I will be sharing this session together with Stefan. I guess we can go right ahead with the first talk. The topic is about splitting the interposed path, a novel modeling attack strategy, and it's a paper by Niels Wiesiol, Christopher Moule, Niklas Pirney, Fong A. Nguyen, Marian Margraaf, Jean-Pierre Savert, Martin van Dijk, and Ulrich Hoermaier, and the talk will be given by Niels. Just a reminder that you can also enter questions on the Zulip chat. That's the most convenient place to put them. And we will go through questions after the talk, or if there are leftover questions, possibly also at the end of the session. Thank you, and I will give the word to Niels now.
Hi, good morning. So thank you for the introduction. Traditionally, we do cryptography based on secrets. So for instance, in authentication, anyone who knows the secret shape of my key or the secret integer of my hardware token can authenticate against my door or my service. When using physically unclonable functions, we try to couple cryptography to physical possession. So you can only authenticate if you have the thing in your hand. How could we possibly do that? Well, there's the Arbiter Path. That was one of the first attempts to do this. And it's a circuit that behaves differently depending on the chip that you put it on. So each chip gets an individual behavior, and that individual behavior we can use cryptographically, for instance, to do authentication or many other things. The problem with the Arbiter Path, though, is there's the logistic regression attack. And this attack is able to model the behavior of the circuit for any given chip with just a couple of examples and a bit of time. So that kind of breaks the expectation that we had, because now the attacker can pretend to be in physical possession, and that's not what we wanted to start with, right? So that's why the XOR Arbiter Path was invented, and the XOR Arbiter Path is, let's say, vastly more complicated than the Arbiter Path in its behavior, because we take a couple of Arbiter Paths and put them next to each other, and then we look at the XOR of the individual behaviors. So that was more complicated, and it lasted for a while, but the problem with the XOR Arbiter Path was that there's the CMAES attack, which basically does the same thing. Given a couple of examples and a bit of time, it can create a model that models the behavior of the XOR Arbiter Path, and then the same story applies with the Arbiter Path. You can pretend you are in physical possession when you're not. Then last year at CHESS, the next iteration in this line of research came around, and that's the Interposed Path. The Interposed Path now is a combination of two XOR Arbiter Paths, and it takes the upper layer response and it puts them in the lower layer, and it just does something, let's say, complicated, and it makes the thing even more complicated to model. And a major contribution last year of the Interposed Path also was that it was shown to be immune against modeling attacks. Immune in the sense that for known attacks, we have low accuracy in the result. So for instance, the CMAES attack, if you were to apply it on the Interposed Path, you would get accuracy no better than random guessing. And if you take the logistic regression attack, which works well on the Arbiter Path, then you get accuracy around 75%, which is, of course, a lot better than random guessing, but it's still, it puts the server or the validator, it puts them in a position where they can say, okay, here's high accuracy, that's the real thing, and this is, well, mediocre accuracy, this is maybe not the real thing, it's probably a model. So that was not too bad. Now, our paper is about the split attack, which increases the accuracy of the LR attack basically to beyond what can be distinguished on the validation side. Okay, the Interposed Path has two important security parameters. One is the number of Arbiter Paths in the upper layer, and one is the number of Arbiter Paths in the lower layer. And let's look at what we can do with the split attack for 64-bit challenge length. And that is, we can model in our paper, we demonstrated we can model interposed puffs with 8 arbiter puffs in the upper layer and 8 arbiter puffs in the lower layer. That is one of the reasonable parameter choices. You just say, okay, we have equal size layers. It took quite a lot of data and it took quite a lot of time, but it is, as you can see in the paper, it's definitely feasible. And also we went one step further for the configuration where you just have 1 arbiter puff in the upper layer and then 9 arbiter puffs in the lower layer. You can see it takes even more data and it takes even more time. But there's no reason to believe that that's the limit of our attack. That's just the limit of our hardware and our time and the effort that we invested. So naturally, now I'm assuming you should think now, okay, let's come up with a better puff design then. And then I will say, well, hold on, before you take your pencil and draw something up. I think the key takeaway from the interposed puff and our splitting attack on the interposed puff is we do need better tools for security analysis. And if you don't remember anything from this talk, then please remember this. Just a low accuracy result in your modeling attack should not be enough to claim your design is immune against this attack. The modeling attack result that you're looking at, it needs more study than just the accuracy. Just look at one number is not enough. All right. I hope I got you interested, and please check out the video or read the paper. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Niels. Floor is open for questions. I didn't see any yet so far. So anyone has a question? Otherwise, let me start with the first question. So I think one of the interesting insights actually that make your attack possible is the fact that logistic regression is robust against feature noise. That's right. Do you think that that also applies to, you could use that insight to make the attack also apply to all types?
Sorry, could you say the question again? I couldn't hear it.
Oh, I'm sorry. So one of the interesting insights is the fact that logistic regression is robust against feature noise. Do you think you can use that insight to apply the attack also to other types of puffs besides the interposed puff?
So what makes the interposed puff so special is that for the lower layer, we don't know the middle challenge bit. So that's the feature noise you're talking about. And I played around with the feature noise. For instance, I eliminated half the challenges. So I took a training set and I replaced, let's say, the first half of the challenge by just noise. And then I trained the model, and obviously it had accuracy very bad. But when I did it in a simulation, so I had the environment controlled, I could compare the weights, let's say internal parameters, the physical parameters. I compared them to the simulation, and it turns out that for some of them, they were trained correctly. So that's why I'm saying low accuracy results are not enough. And I think I'm unaware of any other puff that is out there that can that has unknown challenge bits in the way the interposed puff has. But definitely, even if it's more than one bit, it may be feasible to recover part of the model when you don't know the challenge bit.
Okay.
Maybe one question from my side, if there is no other question. So do you think that like Arbiter type of puffs have a future? Because I've seen only broken constructions so far, or almost broken.
Yes.
Almost only broken constructions.
Yes. I guess it's a double-edged sword, because we have a very well understanding of how arbiter puffs work. And we gained that understanding through the iteration of design attack, design attack, design attack. And of course you can say, okay, all hope is lost because all the attempts failed. But you could also say, well, we have now this building block that we have a very good understanding about. And now let's take this and put it into something bigger and try to build it. I mean, maybe you can think of it as a block cipher, right? The parts are well understood and sort of easy to model, but the overall design isn't anymore.
There's a question from Ingrid. Will, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, I just thought it's actually the same question you asked. She also asks a follow-up question: is how will you combine arbiter puffs in a nonlinear combination? Do you think that is possible without destroying all the puff properties?
Combining arbiter puffs non-linearly, I mean, that depends on your notion of linearity, first of all, I guess. The XOR isn't like it's linear in F2, if you want to say that, but I mean, it's still different linear than the linear addition of the delays that you have in the arbiter puff. So from my point of view, this is already a non-linear combination. Now, if you add the interposing, where you take challenge bits from arbiter puffs and you put them in other arbiter puffs, that is also, to my understanding, not linear. So I think we have plenty of options. The question is, can we come up with a design that is, I mean, there's also more than just the LR attack and the CMAS attack, right? So the question is, that the challenge really is, do we come up with something that withstands all those attacks? And I think, well, what I'm trying to show here is that it's not enough to say, okay, we have low accuracy. We need to look at the details. We need to look at the model, even if it has low accuracy, and we need to see, does it resemble anything close to what we have?
Okay, thank you. I think it's time for the next talk, Stefan.
Okay, so we move to the second presentation of this session, and now we switch topics towards white-box cryptography. And I'm happy that Junwei Wang will present a paper on defeating state-of-the-art white-box countermeasures with advanced gray box attacks.
Thank you very much for your introduction. This work was done while I was a PhD student at the University of Luxembourg and the University Paris 8, together with Louis Goubin and Mathieu Rubin. So WhiteBox Crypto talks about how to securely store a secret key in a software implementation of some cipher. In this model, we consider an adversary who could fully control the implementation and its execution environment in the worst case. In this model, the ability of the adversary is greatly enhanced. For instance, she could spy on the memory in the runtime. She could also modify the code, inject faults, and reset the randomness. So although the demand of WhiteBox crypto keeps growing in the past years, we don't have any probably secure WhiteBox solution for any standard block cipher for about 20 years exploration. This forced the industry try to achieve security through obfuscation, namely they put a layer of obfuscation on top of their secret design made at home. The industry hopes this would discourage the attacker by time-consuming reverse engineering, plus the time to develop new attacks. At just 2016, both authors suggested to apply DPA techniques to break white-box implementations, different with the classic DPA in gray-box model, which works with the noisy suction leakage. The attack in white-box model works with the noise-free computational leakage, which could be any runtime information collected by the attacker, such as the value existing in the register and the memory. The attack hence is called differential computation analysis. So this is a generic attack because it doesn't need to know any implementation detail. Surprisingly, the authors have shown that it is able to break many public available white-box implementations. Since then, DCA has become a main threat of security through obscurity paradigm. Since DCA is DPA techniques used in white-box context, it is nature to adopt DPA countermeasure to protect white-box implementations. linear masking and shuffling are two commonly applied group-box countermeasure. The idea is to make any small subset of variables in the implementation is independent with the protected sensitive variables, or to increase the noise in the adversary's observation. However, linear masking can still be attacked by high order DC with exponential complexity in terms of linear masking order. It was then proposed to use linear decoding analysis to break linear masking, whose complexity only depends on the size of the attack trace window. When shuffling is applied, linear decoding analysis wouldn't work. However, high order DC can still be possible, especially when the attacker is able to integrate all the shuffled value. Now, linear masking is proposed at the Asia Crypto 2018 to counter linear decoding analysis. However, it is still vulnerable to DCA and quadratic decoding analysis. It is worth noting that any countermeasure mentioned above alone is not able to resist all existing group-box attacks. Hence, the state-of-the-art WhiteBox implementation tends to combine all countermeasures together. In the security through obscurity paradigm, since the adversary doesn't know the implementation detail, she is forced to attack a big trace window. The attack then become impractical when all those countermeasures combined into the size of the attacked window. The winning implementation of WhiteBox 2019 is also based on combined countermeasures. So in this paper, we propose a data dependency analysis attack, which reduces the high order DC complexity significantly. Our analysis is based on an observation in linear masking gadget for AND operation. We observed that each share of one variable is multiplied with all shares of the other variable. Now consider one circuit-based WhiteBox implementation on the right. So we try to find the cooperand for each gate for AND operation. For instance, BDE are the cooperand of gate C for AND operation. If C happens to be a share of some variable, then BDE could be the linear shares for some another variable, which could be a sensitive intermediate variable. That's to say, if we sum BDE together, which would the value would recover some sensitive variable. So our data dependency analysis then starts by collecting data dependency traces, which contains the sum of the cooperands of each gate for AND operation. The base value would be recovered in the data dependency traces. So then we perform the standard DC attack on the data dependency traces. Note that if there are some noise value in the cooperand set, we can simply take a subset of the full set. This attack would substantially improve the computation complexity by avoiding obtaining high order traces, which is exponential in linear masking order. And the data dependency attack was used to break all three winning implementation from WhiteBox 2019. So in concluding this paper, we revisit the state-of-the-art WhiteBox countermeasures, and we analyze the performance of different attacking paths against these countermeasures and their combinations. We then propose a new data dependency-based attack who improve the computation complexity of existing attacks substantially. And we apply this technique to break the winning implementation from WhiteBox 2019. Thank you for your attention. Our paper and attack are both online. I would be happy to take your question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. There is already one question in the chat. This question is: without shuffling, did you consider using higher degree decoding analysis against the cooperand values?
Against what value? Sorry?
Against the cooperand values.
Yeah, yes, it's still be possible. So we didn't look at this particular question in the paper, but the attack is can be generalized to if you look at gate in the circuit, you can look all the values that is cooperand of this gate, and you can do it for many layers to certain small cluster of gates that could including could contain all the nonlinear masking, for instance, nonlinear masking shares, and then you apply the high degree decoding analysis in this small cluster of gates. And since the high decoding analysis, the complexity is the size of the window raised to the decoding degree times 2 times 8. If your t is small, which makes sure which bring your high degree decoding analysis, the complexity is small.
Good. Are there any other questions from the audience? So far, I don't see anything in the chat. Ah, yeah, there's one more question. Can these attacks be adjusted to different ciphers than AES?
Yes, it's quite generic as long as the implementation is based on combined countermeasure from combined WhiteBox countermeasures in some ways. It can be attacked, and as long as we can use the differential power analysis kind of attack to attack the implementation for this cipher.
So maybe one final question from my side, a very general one, similar to the question that I asked before. Do you still see hope for WhiteBox crypto? Again, so, I see many attacks and not so many successful implementations.
Thanks for the question. It's a very good question. So I don't know how to answer that, but I do know that we need WhiteBox in certain circumstances. So, but I don't know. We just don't know how to do that. But we need that.
We still have to try and see whether we can get there eventually. Okay, thanks. So then we will switch to the third talk. And the third talk will be given by Estuardo Alpires Bock. The title of the paper is on the security goals of WhiteBox cryptography.
Okay. Thank you, Stefan, and good morning, everyone. So this is a joint work with Alessandro Amadori, Chris Brusca, and Will Michels. And so thanks to Yunwei's talk, now you know what the WhiteBox attack scenario is all about. And in this paper, what we did is we wanted to understand and clarify what exactly are the security goals of WhiteBox crypto. So it's clear that a WhiteBox program needs to achieve security against key extraction. And indeed, this is a very difficult goal to achieve. But we wanted to analyze the use cases that we give to WhiteBox crypto. And we realized that depending on the use case that you're giving to WhiteBox crypto, the goals that a WhiteBox program needs to achieve are a little bit different. So in the sense of what else should the program achieve besides security against key extraction. So in the work, we analyzed previously defined or previously proposed goals and their security notions, their formalizations. And we propose to focus on new goals and formalize them in this work. So the use case that's more interesting for us in this work is when WhiteBox crypto is used for protecting mobile payment applications. And in the mobile payment application, what happens is you have these limited use keys stored in encrypted form. And every time you want to perform a payment, you decrypt them. And so what you do is you decrypt them with a WhiteBox program, and then you use them as a key for generating a payment request message. And so usually your WhiteBox program consists of these two, the decryption and encryption program bound together. And WhiteBox crypto is used to achieve robustness against a possible adversary in the form of malware that might be trying to extract information from the app, such that he can decrypt the LUKs by himself. But as we see, such applications might be also subject to code lifting attacks, where the adversary simply copies the complete application or the decryption and the encrypted LUKs, and that way he can use a copy of that application in any device of his choice, and then just go to a payment terminal and perform a payment without really needing to perform any key extraction in this case. So here we see that for mobile payment applications, WhiteBox programs also need to achieve security against code lifting attacks. And in the past, there have been some properties proposed to mitigate code lifting attacks in WhiteBox, known as traceability and incompressibility. So I will not talk about them right now, but I talk a bit about them on the video. And in this work, we realized that those properties might not be very suitable for protecting payment applications. So we propose to focus on the property that we call hardware binding. And here the idea is that you have a WhiteBox program, which is only executable in one specific hardware device. In this case, we can identify with some hardware key, for instance. So whenever I want to perform an encryption, I will check if I'm on the correct hardware device. And in the case that I am, then I will generate the ciphertext. And in the case that I'm not, then I will just output an error message. And in the work, we present a security notion capturing this property. And here what we do is we give the adversary the WhiteBox program. So EncHW stands for a WhiteBox encryption program with hardware binding. And additionally, we give him a query algorithm. So more on the query algorithm on the video, but the idea is that you generate queries based on the message and the nonce that you're going to use for encrypting. And then the hardware oracle provides you a response value, this sigma. And with this response value, the adversary can use his WhiteBox program. So he can analyze it and perform encryptions and so on. And then what happens is the adversary goes on to play a distinguishing game. And here we have a left or right oracle, very similar to the one we see on authenticated encryption definitions. But the only difference is that the adversary is not allowed to query this oracle with messages that have been already used for querying the hardware. So what we capture here is that the adversary is trying to make himself independent from the hardware. And additionally, we also give him access to this decryption oracle, which similarly to the authenticated encryption definition, but also similar in this case, the adversary can only query with ciphertexts whose corresponding message has not been used for querying the hardware. And yeah, with this, I finish this short presentation, and I thank you all for your attention.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions from the audience? I do not see anyone. Then let me probably ask one. So do you have hopes to construct such primitives that you define here, or is that at the moment a very general definition?
No. So there's a separate work called security reductions for WhiteBox crypto in mobile payment, and there we propose we present a feasibility result of a WhiteBox KDF with hardware binding, which achieves this property, and it achieves it based on puncturable PRFs and on indistinguishability obfuscation. And yes, of course,
very, very heavy machinery, right? I mean,
yes, it's a heavy assumption, but this was our first step towards that direction. I have hopes for having feasibility results with a bit more accepted assumptions from other types of primitives, and so from other works in progress that we have, but it's not so advanced yet. So you might see it soon.
Nice. Okay, are there any other questions from the audience regarding this talk?
Perhaps I have I see someone is asking. Yeah, you can. Oh yeah, so someone is asking, since you use a hardware element, is it still a point of having WhiteBox crypto?
Yes.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask the same question. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. So here we should note that this hardware that we use is performing a very small operation. Like in our setting, or as I say, where we construct this, the hardware just stores some secret key material, and then runs a PRF based on this secret key material, and then outputs this. So we have this dependency on the hardware that is as small as possible. And then in such way, when we design our software program and our WhiteBox program, we can design it however we want. We don't need to trust the hardware, and we can design it also in such way that it copes with whichever system we want to use our WhiteBox program on. Because it might be that our phone provides us with some hardware, with some secure hardware, but perhaps it doesn't perform some operations that we need within the system that we want to use the program. So it's more of like a flexibility argument in this case.
Okay. So I guess we would then switch to the final presentation of this session.
Yes. So I see a few other questions coming in that we have to, in this sake of time, we have to switch. I guess you can also see them as well on the Zulu chat and answer them there, perhaps.
Yeah. Just one remark. If you have a question, please ask it in the Zulu chat and not in the Zoom chat, because the Zoom chat will disappear, whereas the other one will get archived. So it's better to put the questions there. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Estuardo. It's time already for the last talk of this session, which is titled Rejection Sampling Schemes for Extracting Uniform Distributions from Biased PUFs. It's a work by Rei Ueno, Kohei Kazumori, and Naofumi Homa. And Rei, you have the floor.
Hello, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Hello, I'm Rei Ueno from Tohoku University. Today, I'm going to present our paper, Rejection Sampling Schemes for Extracting Uniform Distribution from Biased Paths. This paper focuses on cryptographic key generation based on weak paths. So maybe you know, path response usually includes noise for repeated observations, and such noise should be tolerated for secure and reliable path-based key generation. Therefore, a fuzzy extractor, FE, is commonly used in path-based key generation for tolerating path noise by error correcting code, ECC. So in the FE key enrollment, so we enroll a secret key K using a random number generator. In addition, we also generate a helper data W using path response and ECC encoding. On the other hand, in the FE reconstruction, so we first calculate the received ECC code word from helper data and noisy path response. And then we perform ECC decoding to reconstruct S and K. Here, helper data is stored in a common non-volatile memory, NVM. Therefore, this indicates attacker can observe helper data by tampering the NVM. So we should design key generation systems such that the attacker has difficulty in predicting random seed and path response through observation of the helper data. In other words, we should consider conditional entropy of random seed given helper data, and this conditional entropy should be greater than sigma for realizing a sigma bit key generation. If path response is completely unpredictable for attacker, the conditional entropy is equal to length of the random seed, and sigma bit key generation is easily realized using a sigma bit random seed. However, this conditional entropy significantly decreases by increase of path bias. The decrease of conditional entropy is called entropy leakage. This is sometimes critical because of the difficulty in fabricating completely unbiased paths. So in case of biased paths, we should make the random seed longer than sigma to realize the sigma bit key generation. Or usage of the debiasing schemes is promising to realize secure and efficient key generation from a biased path. So typically, debiasing scheme extracts unbiased bit string from biased path response and use it instead of low path response to avoid entropy leakage. This right figure shows path size required for reliable 128-bit key generation with and without debiasing scheme. As you can see, unless debiasing scheme, required path size rapidly grows with increase of path bias, especially when the bias is greater than 0.58. But debiasing based FE can efficiently realize the key generation for a wide range of biases. In previous studies, the efficiency of debiasing based FE is evaluated through path size for key generation because it clearly related to the hardware cost. So development of more efficient debiasing based FE improves the implementation cost of the path-based key generation. So in our paper, we present a new debiasing scheme based on rejection sampling and its FE construction named acceptance over rejection, AR-based FE. So maybe you know, rejection sampling is the method for deriving target distribution from deriving target distribution from available proposal distribution. The basic idea of the proposal scheme is rather simple. So we perform the rejection sampling in a bitwise manner. Since the value of ith path cell is considered to follow P1 biased Bernoulli distribution, we can obtain a uniform distribution from ith cell via rejection sampling, which considers the target distribution is the uniform distribution and proposal distribution is the Bernoulli based distribution. So more precisely, so rest figure shows ith path cell response as Bernoulli distribution. And this is the proposal distribution. And we can obtain a uniform distribution by rejecting measure values of measure values for the ith cell with appropriate probability as shown like this. However, the minor values always accepted to derive debiased bit string as long as possible. So rightmost figure shows example of extraction of debiased bit string by rejection sampling. Here, it's assumed p sub 1 is greater than p sub 0, and 1 is the measure value for all cells. Therefore, some cells having value of 1 are rejected with probability of 0.57 in this case, and all 0 cells are retained. So here, ACL data is also generated. This represents acceptance or rejection of the bit position by the binary value. So this is useful for the reconstruction. So we can easily reproduce the debiased bit string by just referring to the HCL data. This figure shows the performance evaluation results. That is, path size for 128-bit key generation using proposed and some conventional FEs. The horizontal axis is path bias and the vertical axis is the path size. As you can see, AR-based FE indicated by red curves has the smallest path size for most biases. So we can confirm that AR-based FE achieves at most 55% smaller path size than conventional FEs. And the NVM size is basically consistent with the path size. So this result clearly shows AR-based FE can reduce hardware cost for implementing path-based key generation system, and thus we confirm the effectiveness of the proposed method. So this slide briefly summarizes the major feature of AR-based FE. So first of all, the AR-based FE has a preferable feature for the implementation. In addition, our proposed debiasing scheme is the first debiasing scheme applicable to the path with local biases depending on the cell addresses. In addition, our scheme can be extended to ternary path response for improved efficiency. The performance evaluation results clearly showed the effectiveness of the proposed method through the simulation of the 128-bit key generation. So that's all. Thank you for coming to my talk.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Any questions from the audience? Don't yet see any coming in. So let me ask the first question. So it seems like for the rejection sampling scheme, it's important that you know actually the value of the bias of the PUF in order for the rejection sampling to reject bits with the right probability. But in practice, we see with some PUFs that the bias is not accurately known upfront, or it can even be variable across devices or across temperatures, for example. How well does the rejection sampling scheme hold up if the bias is not exactly known, or if it varies a bit over time?
Yes, as you mentioned, so it takes a cost to derive accurate biases and bit error rates for PUF instances. However, we can design the proposed FE based on the worst case evaluation. That is, if the worst case resolution of the bias is known for the designer, we can evaluate the PUF sizes or this rejection probability based on the worst case evaluation of the PUF bias. And so I mean we can design with the buffering entropy through the evaluation of the worst case evaluation.
Okay.
It's mentioned in our paper previously.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Any other questions from the audience? I don't see anyone yet on Tulip. I guess we also have a little bit of time for more general questions for any of the speakers. Is that right? But I think most of them have been answered so far. So perhaps let me ask one final question to Ray then. Do you think rejection sampling for biased PUFs, could it be optimal? Is it close to optimal for debiasing schemes for PUFs in the terms of entropy, that is? Or do you think there is still something to be gained by better methods?
It's a difficult question, but in the current status, the proposal scheme has the highest efficiency in terms of the retained entropy, but there is no proof for the optimality of the efficiency. So I think it is kind of the open question for this field.
Okay, yeah, I think so too. Okay, since I don't see any further questions, thank you, Ray, and I think I can also thank all the speakers of this talk.
Thanks.
So that concludes the session. And as there are any further questions, I think we can conclude, right, Kevin?
Yes, I believe the next session will start in 35 minutes. There is a coffee break, social break in the meantime. There's a link from the program.
Okay then.